Act, Chapter 231, Public Law of 1975. This meeting was sent to the Asbury Park Press on September 1st, 2021, and has been duly advertised in the Asbury Park Press issue of September 3rd, 2021. All municipalities, clerks of the township, and the boroughs within the Freehold Regional District have been duly notified, and the requirements of this posting of notices have been sent net on September 1st, 2021. Will you please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stand for a moment of silence. Please join me in a moment of silence for Steve Villa, a Manalapan High School teacher and coach who suddenly passed away over the weekend. Rest in peace, Steve. Mr. Toscano, are there any changes to the executive session tonight?
Yes, Mr. President. Yes, there are conditions to the items that was noted on the agenda that was printed in advance of the meeting. The board also discussed in matter number 2, student discipline matters. In number 7, conditions of settlement agreement listed. The board also discussed the settlement agreement in agency matter 2022-3078. And the board also discussed under exemption number 7, the ice hockey rink leases.
Is that all, Mr. Toscano?
Yes, that's all.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of September 30th, 2021?
Motion.
Ms. Higley, Ms. Capiello?
Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? No discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
I'll be abstaining.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
I abstain. I don't believe I'm here.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Communications are on file in the office of the board secretary. We are going to have our superintendent's report tonight by our assistant superintendent, Mr. Sean Boyce. Mr. Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. So Dr. Sampson wanted me to mention a couple of things, and then I have some additional comments on the referendum that is going to be on the ballot on Election Day, November 2nd. But first, Spooktacular is an event, it's actually a month-long event in Freehold Borough that has been in place since 1994. And if you haven't had the opportunity to experience that, there's a lot of great stuff going on down there. One of those things is that students from all 6 of our high schools made their way down today to do some window painting. The window painting aspect of that has actually been around for more than 50 years. Got some of the history on that today, but it's really evolved into a celebration, a comprehensive month-long celebration that culminates on Halloween with a parade right through the middle of Freehold Borough. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I think it's worth your time. I also wanted to mention that our band festival is going to be on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And what has been done here for many years is we pull together the bands from all 6 of our high schools to one school being hosted at Howell High School this year. And they all perform for each other their halftime routines that they're doing at football games. So they celebrate their work and perform for their fellow classmates from other schools that participate in their respective bands. So I would encourage you to consider making it out to that. It's a great event as well. The referendum, which, as many of you will know and have heard in one form or another, is on the ballot for on November 2nd on Election Day. So I just wanted to make a couple comments on that. This is the third referendum that has been presented in the last 4 years. So 2018, there was a $40 million referendum that was unsuccessful. In 2019, same scope of work, structured a little differently, also unsuccessful. 2020, there was no referendum, but what we did this time is really did narrow it down to things that were most critical and urgent work. So let me be more specific about that. Critical in as this is necessary to keep the doors open and stuff, right? Roofing, paving, these are, functional aspects of our campuses, and it's work that needs to be done regardless of the outcome of the referendum. The benefit of the referendum is that when a district does go through that process and funds it that way, the state picks up 40% of the cost. So that amounts to a 40% discount for the Freehold Regional community. We have priced this at just shy of $15 million, and if successful, the district will pay back $8.68 million. So that's a considerable discount on the work. If it's unsuccessful, as I mentioned, that the work needs to be done anyhow, and that'll be brought into our annual budget operation, our annual operations budget, and compete for dollars along with everything else. But the situation with our annual budget, as you may also know, under the state funding legislation known as S2, which is shifting state aid away from districts like Freehold Regional. And so that situation is, our budget has been strained for the last 4 years, and the next 3 years as it's a 7-year phasing. A successful referendum does nothing to solve S2. But a failed referendum adds another significant layer of hardship and problems that we'll have to work through that will undoubtedly change Freehold Regional, the Freehold Regional that we know and our communities have come to expect. So it's a really important decision that we're asking the communities to make. There's a wealth of information on our website, so I would invite you all to check in on that and encourage you to go to the polls on November 2nd. So I wanted to share those comments with you also. The other item that we have on the agenda, I'm going to ask Dr. Hazel for her assistance in walking through some of the testing work. Dr. Hazel?
Sure, thank you. Each school year, the school district reports on the annual state assessment results. As everybody knows, the 2021 school year was significantly disrupted with the COVID-19 pandemic, and the state did not administer the NJSLA assessment in spring of 21. So in lieu of that federal requirement, this fall, we were administering the Start Strong assessments. That went on in October. It'll conclude with makeups, I think, around October 22nd. And we should have results from those assessments by the end of 21, this school year. There were 2 tests that we did administer to 2 populations. Our English language learners, they take the Access 2.0 test, that the other exam was the DLM, which is Dynamic Learning Maps for some of our special education students. For the Access for ELLs, that's an assessment where we're really measuring the growth of the speaking and listening and language skills of our ELL students. There are scoring categories that run from a 1 to 6, from entering, emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and reaching. If students score a 4.5 or higher on that assessment, they really no longer need the ESL services. But again, we're really looking at that test as a measure of their growth over time through our program. So we had 13 students tested in grade 9. There were 2 students at a level 3 and a student at a level 4. In grade 10, we had 30 students, 3 at a level 4, 1 at a level 5, 1 student who had a 4.5 or higher. Grade 11, there were 28 students who were tested, 6 students at a level 4, 1 student at a 5, and 1 student at a 6, with 3 being at 4.5 or higher. And grade 12, we had 16 students, 3 at a level 3, 2 at a level 4, and 1 at the 4.5 or higher. In 2021, we also administered, again, for the students that were in session, the dynamic learning maps. And that's an alternative assessment for classified students, and that's administered in grade 11. That has performance levels as well: emerging, approaching target, at target, and advanced. That, again, grade 11 students in English language arts, we had 10 students that were tested across the district, and all of the students, 100% of the students, were at target or advanced. Grade 11 science, again, 10 students tested, and we had 60% of the students at target or advanced. And grade 11 mathematics, 10 students tested, and 80% were at target or advanced. And as I said, strong testing is the federal requirement, so we completed that this fall, and we should have results by the end of 2021.
Thank you. Now, the ELL, once you reach your 5.0, you don't have to take it again?
4.5 or higher,
That's it?
then you can be exited from the ESL services.
Thank you. Just one more comment on the referendum. We went to the Marlboro Howe game last week, football game, and handed out cards and put up some signs, and I am so surprised. Parents are so engaged. They knew so much about it already. I think it's a good job the schools are doing, the principals and their administration are doing, getting the word out. And they said, oh, we got emails, we got the cards already. So I think the schools are doing a really good job. Thank you, keep it up. We have 3 more weeks to go. So, but I was surprised to see how engaged the parents and everything, like, got it. So, and they're following the principals on Twitter, and so keep up the good work. 3 more weeks. Thank you. Okay. Now we're going to go to our board's reports. We have one tonight, that is policy. Mr. Weiss out of Weiss, our Manalapan rep, will do that policy report tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Before I get into the policy report, I just want to report out to the fellow members of the board that last night, Mr. Dillon, Manalapan High School principal, and I appeared before the Manalapan Township Committee with regard to the referendum, and our presentation appeared to be very, very well received by the Township Committee, the Deputy Mayor, and the Mayor. With regard to the Policy Committee, on October 4th, the Policy Committee met. There are a number of policies on tonight's agenda, both for first reading, for second reading, I believe, and also to be abolished. Specifically, the policies to be abolished deal with at-risk students, children displaced by domestic violence, and a policy that deals with religious holidays. You should know that while these policies are being abolished, the sum and substance of them are dealt with in other policies for the most part. So this would be, the abolishment would be to avoid any duplicative policies and also other language that may have been abolished or done away with by way of changes in codes. With regard to policies to be adopted, we do have one that is going to be on one reading only, and that's for emergency virtual or remote instruction. This is a mandatory policy, at least Strauss Esme says it's a mandatory policy, but it does allow us to offer virtual instruction with certain conditions under certain circumstances. For first reading tonight, we have a policy with regard to school employee vaccinations, affirmative action programs, comprehensive health and physical education. There is a policy with regard to surrogate parents and resource family parents, eligibility for resident and non-resident students, education of homeless children, as well as hygienic management, eye protection, emergency and crisis situations, fire and fire drills, meal charges and outstanding food service charges. I think that that's about it. So unless anyone has any questions, that is all that I have to report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Mrs. Capiello is also on that committee that met on October 4th.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You have another?
Mrs. Capiello, I'm sorry I didn't mention Mrs. Capiello.
She's also on that committee and that met on October 4th. Believe it or not, we do not have any public participation tonight, Mr. Boyce.
I do have some changes to the agenda.
Okay.
If I could note those now. We have 3 additional items, so let me cover those first. G12 is approval of bus driver successor agreement. Be it resolved that the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education adopt and approve the collective negotiation agreement between the board and the Freehold High School District Bus Drivers Association for the period of July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2024. G13 is approval of the Freehold Regional Custodial Maintenance Association Successor Agreement. Be it resolved that the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education adopts and approves the collective negotiation agreement between the board and the Freehold Regional High School District School Custodial and Maintenance Association for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. And finally, for additional items to be added to the agenda, K7, approval of agreement. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Freehold Regional High School District approve the agreement with Central State Healthcare Systems. In addition to that, there are some amendments to existing agenda items. So let me walk through that on the board on the yellow sheet of paper. The top item there is G1, should read G2. It's approval of appointments, and we'd like to add name Lorraine Wiley, a long-term special education teacher at Colts Neck High School. Step BA 1 at a salary of $67.50 prorated per diem, and the effective dates are November 8th, 2021 to December 23rd, 2021. Next is G5, which is approval of honoraria. If we could remove the name Jeremy Mercer as assistant boys basketball coach at Freehold High School, remove that name from the attachment. J9, approval of settlement agreements. We have one listed on the agenda. We're going to add one, so it would be approval of settlement agreements. And the additional settlement agreement is number 2022-33078. And finally, K3, approval of agreement with Jersey Shore Arena. We'd just like to add the language that the board, I'll read it in its entirety. Be it resolved that the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education approves, subject to attorney review, the agreement with Jersey Shore Arena. And those are the additions and amendments to the agenda, Mr. President.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move along here. We have personnel and negotiations, G. I would like to take G1 through G13. May I have a motion to take G1 through G13?
Second.
Capiello, Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Weiss. Yeah. Any discussion? If no discussion, may I have a roll call?
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes on everything except G13, and on that I abstain.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes, except for G5, Matthew Colson abstained, and for the G13 for the FRCMA, I abstained.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses? Yes. Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I'd like to take program operations, which is under H, program operations, building, transportation, and physical plant, H1 through I through 3. May I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second.
Any, okay, Mrs. Higley. Any discussion? If no discussion, may I have a roll call?
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses? Yes. Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes. Now we're going to move along to educational programs and administration. I'd like to have a motion to approve J1 through K7.
Move.
Second.
Ms. Capiello, Ms. Sigley?
Any discussion? If no discussion, may I have a roll call?
Mrs. Capiello?
Yes on everything except K1, I abstain from myself, and I abstain from K7.
Mrs. Higley?
Yes, and everything except I abstain on myself for K1.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mr. Moses? Yes. Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Just, wait a second, Ms. Finelli, just.
I know, I'm sorry.
Just, okay. Yeah, just, so staying on K1, just for as for herself.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss?
Yes.
Mr. Parisi?
Yes, except I abstain on K1 regarding myself.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
All motions carried.
We're going to move along to old business. Mr. Parisi, do you have anything to add about school boards?
Sure, you want me to do that old business
It's up to
or
you.
new?
It's up to you.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
So, first I wanted to thank the administration and building leadership for their advocacy for the Freehold Regional High School District referendum that's coming up on November 2nd. Mr. Weiss, I attended the Powell Township Town Council meeting this past Tuesday, in which Mr. Brockerman, the principal of Powell High School, was there and gave a nice presentation and overview to the governing body regarding the referendum. He did an excellent job, and I want to thank him for coming out to that meeting. Regarding the New Jersey School Board Association, the public may have just heard that there were several of us that just abstained on K1 regarding ourselves. That's because there is a New Jersey School Board Association is having their annual virtual workshop. Hopefully next year we'll be back into in person, but this year it's going to be a virtual workshop. It's held October 26th through October 28th. Attending are going to be myself, Mrs. Capiello, Mrs. Finelli, Mrs. Lavin is not here tonight, and Mrs. Higley. I'm assuming there's some members of the public that have never attended this workshop, but it's like from like 9 o'clock in the morning through 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. There's like hour-long presentations and workshops all throughout the day. If you're watching it online, and you can kind of like look at the whole agenda, and you can kind of jump around and jump back and forth from like different meetings, and there's a lot of really great presentations from really interesting, qualified, smart, professional people. I attended it last year, and I thought it was just very well done. And then they leave a lot of the workshop open after it ends on October 28th. They leave it open so you can go back in and you can watch things that like you may not have been able to watch because you were watching something else. So it's really great. The New Jersey School Board Association has a new president. A lady by the name of Irene LaFave, who served on the Boomtown Board of Education for 26 years. She became the New Jersey School Board Association president recently, so I'd just like to recognize her. And then one last thing, I was looking through, I don't know if you guys know, but on October 6th, the New Jersey Department of Education announced the winner for the Teacher of the Year. And I was just reading the story about this woman who is a teacher in East Orange, and as I was reading her story, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read a little bit of this tonight because I think that it's something that we all need to hear. So, the winner of this award this year was a lady by the name of Teresa Mahon. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but it's spelled Maughan. So I think it's Mahon. She is from East Orange School District. She's the East Orange STEM Academy, and it reads as follows. Ms. Mahon got an inkling that she wanted to be an educator in 7th grade when her social studies teacher, Mrs. Roman, organized a letter writing campaign to her class's congressional representative. The effort sought to prevent Mrs. Mahon from being deported. That was after Mrs. Mahon realized she was a dreamer, a child brought to the United States without documentation. She immigrated to the United States from Belize with her parents, who remained in the country after their visas had expired. As a result of her teacher's efforts, Mrs. Mahon and her family went through the naturalization process and became American citizens. Quote, my teacher ignited our class with the realization that we could take our civics lessons and use them in real-life situations. A few years later, Mrs. Mahon became teacher for the day when her social studies class reenacted the impeachment trial of President Andrew Johnson. She says, I was hooked, she said. Even though I had considered a career as an immigration lawyer to help people experiencing what I went through in the 7th grade, I knew that a career in teaching would provide me the best opportunity to fulfill my commitment to change, to work for change. Quote from Dr. Feinsaw, the executive director of the school board association, he says, she's an extraordinary teacher. She's a lifelong learner who seeks creative ways to engage students and help them overcome obstacles. These qualities are exemplified by Teresa Mahon. And it just goes on, I won't read the entire article, but it just talks about her life, and I just think that it's an interesting story of how she came to become a teacher. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the 3 other finalists for this award were Lynn Husat, a 2nd grade teacher from Swedesboro, Woolwich School District in Gloucester County, Alyssa Geary, a special education and English teacher at Red Bank Middle School in the Red Bank School District, and Faith Ron Karani, an English teacher at the Phillipsburg High School. So that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Weiss, you're also attending the school board's meeting?
Yes, most likely.
Okay, so we're going to move to new business. Are there any members wishing to discuss new business? Okay, no new business. May I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting? Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.